Thank you for listening to the Content Machine podcast. This is part 2 of our interviews with Matt Marshall of the United Way. Well, so you come in and you start pretty quickly changing kind of the dynamic of what it's done for forever. So from a leadership perspective, how are you working on that change with the team? Like, how are you communicating that? Did you have pushback? Like, how does that go down?
Yeah, so it's been an interesting, I think, transition for sure. So what happened was, right when I first started, obviously I'd interview with the board and kind of like explain what I hoped, the vision for the organization could be. But as I had our very first staff meeting, I kind of just walked into that staff meeting and I just sat down with the staff and asked them, what do you need from me? What do you need from me from this leadership position? And like, what would you like to see? And all those types of things. And so that really was the genesis of all the rest of it. And in that transition, because one of the things they communicated, that at that meeting was kind of the same thing that I had already picked up on. There were some areas of need in the community that, they felt like we could address. Now, I'm not going to sit there and say that any of us at that time knew what that was. Mm-hmm. It wasn't so much that as much as it felt like we could do more. Mm-hmm. And so over the course of the next several months and next year or so, we just continue to have those conversations and delve deeper into what does that mean? And again, things like the Alice report really helped us to kind of identify that. And then the services we were providing through the pandemic also played a role for sure. If anything, I think I've always said to everyone, a lot of the work and the thought process that went into those first early months on the job, late 2019, early 2020, we already kind of have begun to identify where we really wanted to go. We weren't sure how we were going to get there, but we had kind of figured out where we wanted to go. And what we felt like ended up happening, rather ironically, is that the pandemic like really put like these thrusters like to that and like just
it exposed. Yeah, it's kind of like the Warren Buffett quote: "When the tide goes out, you see who's swimming naked."
That's right.
Like it shows so many things that were kind of maybe hidden by the economy or things like that.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that the, pandemic naturally did was it highlighted need in our community even more. Mm-hmm. And so it helped clarify for us, okay, like, yeah, this is where we need to be investing. So, early on, like, those were the feelings we had. And so over the course of time, as you're working with, the staff and you're trying to identify, okay, what does this really practically mean on a day-to-day basis? I think a lot of I don't really sense any real moments of like real pushback. Yeah. Not at all. If anything, I felt like always a very strong sense of excitement and enthusiasm from our team on, direction, and where we were going. And I think a lot of that was because I'm very like team oriented in terms of like those types of things. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I may have like initial thought or a vision for something. And I really, really love vision casting. Mm-hmm. That's definitely where I love to kind of sit. It gets hard for me, like the details of all the stuff. That's where like I have to have awesome people around me to help with all of that. Mm-hmm. But yes, I would walk into the room at times and just have this vision for something. But the process of fleshing that out was always a team project. And I very much welcome that. And so I think it allowed for the staff and the board to feel a part of that process. Mm-hmm. And so like this was our vision. It wasn't Matt Marshall's vision. Yeah. It was United Way's vision on how we get there.
And there's a little bit of that's going to be more engaging because you're doing something new that's requiring buy-in as opposed to just doing the same old thing again and again.
That's right.
And so it gets people really heavily invested. So you have been leading for a couple of years now. When you think about how to brand and market the United Way, mm-hmm. How does that thought process work for you?
Yeah, so I'll go back to, and I don't think we've solved this issue yet. If I'm honest, I think we have taken some great strides, but the key problem I walked into. So my first week, all I did was watch a ton of webinars and conferences and all this type of stuff from United Way mm-hmm. worldwide and from all over the United States talking about United Way. And I tell everyone, like, I just was 2 days into that, and I was like, oh, I see the problem. As I alluded to earlier, no one could tell you what United Way does.
Yeah.
The vast majority of people. Now, and I tend to separate this out by generations and by age groups, because I think if you were to ask someone, generally speaking, who's 50 or older, they probably could.
Yeah.
But if you were to ask someone, what generally speaking, what we maybe refer to as your Gen Xers, your millennials, and for sure now Gen Z, who is United Way? Your Gen Xers would say, yeah, we've heard of United Way, and we kind of could tell you maybe what they do. Your millennials would say, I'd say only 50% of them might say that they've heard of United Way, definitely couldn't tell you what they do. And I'd say most of your Gen Z would be like, never heard of United Way, have no clue what they do. Millennials would recognize the logo. They probably get that. And so Gen Z might not even get that far.
Yeah.
And so that's been the core issue, is like, okay, like the marketing problem is that itself, like brand recognition. And so we actually just from United Way Worldwide did a huge like national survey on all of this and looked at the data, and it was really, really interesting. And so for me, hyper-localize that. Our issues are the same just as pretty much anywhere else. Decent brand recognition. People who do know us have respect for us and trust us, generally speaking. But again, the vast majority of people couldn't tell you what we do, or even if they could, they have question marks because many of them would say we sound like a middleman. And I don't think they're exactly wrong.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to be just a middleman, right? It's a bad place to be. But it's like, but how can we be more than that? And so a big piece of marketing has been trying to figure that out. How can we change the way people view our work and view the impact we're having in the community? How can we create great stories from the successes of that impact that we're having in the community, both through our partner agencies and through our direct programming now? How can we get people excited about what United Way is doing and want to be a part of that? And so all of our marketing strategies have been geared around trying to solve those problems, trying to answer those questions. And so again, I think we have grown by leaps and bounds over the last 3.5 years in relation to that. But I would be, really honest and say we're still far from where I think we could be.
And when you're introducing your new concepts, do you feel like that muddies the water even further, or how do you feel like that plays in?
Yeah, no, I actually think, and the only reason I can confidently say no is because we spend a lot of time thinking and talking through it. I think it had the potential to do that, right? So, as an example, as a nonprofit of nonprofits, there could be folks who just might say, you just need to do what you always did. And I maybe should back up at this point and say, well, why didn't we just continue to do what we've always done? Well, it wasn't working anymore. If I'm just going to be, blatantly honest, it wasn't working. Our donations over the past 20 years had just been on a steady decline. And so we were getting less and less donations, which matter not only to our organization, but more importantly to all those organizations we support. And so we want to be able to provide as much funding and backing for them as we can. But if their donations are just steadily going down, well, eventually, that's gonna, it's gonna hit the fan, and we're not gonna be able to do that anymore. And so we had to shift in some way. And so part of this, the problem we're solving for, is not only, and I've said this from day one, I've been really, really honest with all of the nonprofits and with the community. When we started our own programs, I didn't say, hey, we're going to start our own programs, and we're just not going to do that old stuff anymore. No, we said from day one, I want to raise more money for all of our nonprofit partners and raise money for these programs because they're both needed and need that support. And so, yeah, it could have been bad, right? It could have, but I think how we've been able to really do that fairly well is by growing support for the other nonprofits too, starting a West Tennessee nonprofit network, starting a Giving Tuesday 731 where we help those nonprofits raise money on Giving Tuesday. Have the newsletter going out to all the nonprofits and to the community about all the different things that are happening, not just with United Way, but everybody else. It's providing all that general support at the same time that we're also trying to raise up these solutions for these other community issues. And so I think we've done a pretty good job of that. And where I see proof in that, and you go, because you could ask that question, well, how do you know, right? How do you know if you're doing a good job with it? Well, again, and I say this like truly with like all the humility in the world, because it's not about me, and it's about our team, and it's about, more importantly, the community, because they've done this. And this is what I said at the celebration breakfast a couple weeks ago. We just had our largest ever fundraising year in the 81-year history of United Way. That's a huge deal, right?
That's a huge deal. That's a huge deal. Yeah.
And I think that lends credence to people are getting excited about this work again. They're getting excited about our brand. They're getting excited about the things we're doing. And that's the community. That ain't me. That's not United Way. That's the community.
Yeah.
And again, it's just about how can we figure out how to kind of insert ourselves into the Jackson and West Tennessee zeitgeist, right? The spirit of the times, to help people understand what we're doing and how they can be a part of that.
Yeah. And I bet there's a strong correlation between people who stop doing United Way campaigns and then stop giving altogether.
Probably so, yeah.
Because it's a little bit
sure.
on autopilot. And
That's
so
right.
probably the net donations go down. And the United Way is great at helping funnel those things. Well, you've kind of answered the rest of my questions in that one question. So, Matt, we appreciate your time to come on here.
Absolutely.
Appreciate what you're doing for West Tennessee. And if people want to know more about the United Way or want to get involved with the United Way, what should they do to do that? Absolutely.
So there's so many different ways they can get involved. So I've only talked about this many of our programs so far. So ones I didn't mention that are awesome programs. And the first one I'll mention that you can get involved with today is the READ Team program. And so we recruit volunteers from all across Madison County specifically. We look to grow this program into other counties here in the coming years. But those volunteers then go into the school system and read and help kids increase their literacy scores, which is so incredibly important. And so we're always looking for more volunteers to help with that process. But people can also get involved in some other things that we're doing. So we hired some tutors on another program called Tutor U this summer that we'll also be executing over the course of the next school year, both here in Madison County and also in Haywood County. People could sign up to be a volunteer for that. The difference between READ Team and Tutor U, READ Team is more based on sight words, and Tutor U is both based on phonetics. So it requires a little bit more training on the phonetics side, but both excellent programs. And we want to tackle that from both sides to give students the best chance at reaching those levels that we need them to reach for our test scores across the state and all that type of thing. That's just an example of how people could volunteer. But, we always say you can give, advocate, or volunteer with United Way. Everybody can do one. If you don't have time to volunteer, maybe consider advocating alongside us for these needs in our community. And if you don't have the time to advocate, but you have resources, consider giving. And again, that can go directly to our programs, but also that can go to dozens of agencies here in West Tennessee that you care about as well. And so everybody can do one of those things. They can find out more information about United Way by going to uwwt.org. Go online, learn all about our programs, learn all about the agencies we support, learn about the things that we're doing and the things that are coming up, and get involved with that. They can follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We have a YouTube page as well where we have some videos up there about stuff we do. And then, of course, they can connect with Kevin Adelsberger Marketing and everything that's going on with them, because we're friends and you talk about us sometimes too.
That's
and
right.
You wear our United Way shirt and
I
you
do.
rep us. And so, yeah.
So, Matt, thank you for your time. And I
you.
hope you all will go help the United Way.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to part 2 of our podcast with Matt Marshall from the United Way. We hope you'll go check out the United Way and listen to future episodes of the Content Machine podcast.